What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. Welcome to our daily show where we discuss everything going on here in our country and around the world that you need to know about here on a daily basis. Take a look at what happened here. Russia sends missile attacks to the capital city of Ukraine, Kyiv, and other cities in Ukraine. Multiple people injured and killed. Take a look at this footage.
Major developments in the war in Ukraine, where overnight multiple explosions rocked the capital city of Kyiv for the first time in 4 months. According to the mayor of Kyiv, explosions went off near the center of the city in an area that includes the historic Old Town, as well as several government offices. The number of casualties is not yet clear. Ukrainian media is also reporting explosions in several other cities, including Lviv, which is seen as a refuge for many people fleeing the fighting. Air raid sirens sounding in every region of Ukraine except Russia annexed Crimea for 4 straight hours. Yesterday, Russia also launched a missile attack that hit a residential building in Zaporizhia, killing at least 13 people and injuring dozens more. At least 10 children were hurt in the attack. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, 6 missiles were reportedly launched from Russian-occupied areas in the city. The city is one of 4 regions in Ukraine that Russia illegally claimed to annex. On his Telegram account this morning, President Volodymyr Zelensky said, quote, "They are trying to destroy us and wipe us off the face of the earth." Those attacks could be seen as a retaliatory measure after the sole bridge connecting the Russian mainland to Crimea went up in flames over the weekend, embarrassing Russian leaders and hobbling an important supply chain for Moscow. According to Russian officials, the massive explosion killed at least 3 people and is being called a terrorist act by Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Ukrainian government has not publicly claimed responsibility for the attack, but one Ukrainian official speaking on the condition of anonymity told the New York Times that Ukraine was behind the explosion. That official added that Ukraine's intelligence services had orchestrated the blast, saying a bomb had been loaded onto a truck that was driven across the bridge. The 12-mile-long bridge is seen as an extremely symbolic target. It is the sole connector that physically merges Russia and Crimea. Putin personally oversaw the bridge's opening in 2018.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says on Putin's strikes, Russia is trying to wipe us off the face of the earth completely. And this goes exactly with what Putin has been saying. This just happened yesterday. Putin convenes Russia's Security Council. His press secretary comments on the possibility of enacting nuclear doctrine. Dmitry Peskov, the press secretary of the president of Russia, Putin, has said that the speculation about the possibility that the explosion on the Crimean Bridge may trigger Russia's nuclear doctrine is an incorrect formulation of this question. He says, no, it is totally incorrect formulation of the question, he said. Responding to Putin's words means that the explosion at the bridge aimed at destroying crucial civilian infrastructure of Russia raised the possibility of triggering Russia's nuclear potential and whether it falls within the scope of the nuclear doctrine. Earlier, Peskov reported that Putin would conduct a meeting with members of the Security Council of the Russian Federation on Monday, which is today. The Security Council meeting is planned for tomorrow. He said this yesterday. We will tell you about the topics after the president's speech, replying to a question when the council was going to meet and if the explosion on the Crimean Bridge would be discussed there. Putin has accused Ukraine's security services of blowing up the Crimean Bridge. He has also called the explosion a terrorist attack directed at destroying Russia's critical infrastructure. But, Russia attacking Kyiv for over 6 months. You know, that's not a terrorist attack. Yeah, bombing hospitals and people's places of living and schools. I mean, you could let me know what that is, because that's literally happening almost every day. You've seen the footage. So it happens one time to Russia, one time. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, we may have to use nuclear weapons to defend ourselves. Meanwhile, it's been happening to Ukraine every day since March. Yeah, imagine what it's like for the Ukrainian people. And it happens to a bridge in going to Crimea, which is really not even Russia. They annexed it, they took it over illegally, just like they are doing now to Ukraine. And all of a sudden they're like, whoa, we may need to use nuclear weapons to defend this now. It's almost like they don't like what's happening there. It's like they don't like a taste of their own medicine. But yet, and what do? They go and attack apartment buildings and cities, not military targets. And playgrounds. I mean, you can let me know your thoughts on this, but this is, I mean, you've just seen the footage. It's just, they're cars that were on fire. They're not military hubs and stuff like that. They're cities that they attacked. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Meanwhile, President Biden warns that Putin is not joking about nuclear weapons. Take a listen.
Sobering words from President Biden, warning about Putin's nuclear threat as his forces lose ground in Ukraine, calling back the most dangerous period of the Cold War. Senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce starts us off. Good morning, Mary.
George, good morning. Well, this was a grim and striking warning from the president. Biden with his starkest comments yet about the risk of nuclear conflict. The president overnight saying that Putin's recent threats to use nuclear weapons amount to the most serious prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Biden saying he knows Putin well and saying he is not joking when he talks about potential use of nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons. As we have seen Russia struggle in its fight with Ukraine, Putin growing increasingly desperate has been ramping up his saber rattling. We have seen him say he will use all available means to protect Russia. He says he is not bluffing, and he says that the U.S. created the precedent for using nuclear weapons. Now, I'm told that the White House sees no indication that Putin is preparing to use nuclear weapons imminently, but this administration, this White House, this president have made it crystal clear there will be consequences if Russia uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The president overnight saying the big question now is, what is Putin's off-ramp? George, how does he find a way out of this?
That is the big question right now. It may just be a threat, but it is serious. You have to take it seriously. Mary Bruce, thanks very much.
Also, President Biden, as you can see here, has a big oil problem. Here's what you need to know about the recent OPEC decision, OPEC Plus, where Saudi Arabia and other OPEC nations teamed up with Russia. They're the plus in OPEC to cut 2 million barrels a day of oil production to raise oil and gas prices and home heating prices and diesel prices. This is already raising gas prices and oil prices across the world, and it's going to cost us more money. Take a listen.
Major oil-producing countries, including Saudi Arabia and Russia, have announced they are cutting oil production by 2 million barrels per day. That means Americans will soon be feeling the effects of that decision when they fill up their gas tanks. But as Ali Rogan reports, the impact will depend, at least in part, on where in the country you live.
Gas prices are likely to change as a result of the decision from OPEC+. That's the group of 23 oil exporting countries who meet regularly to decide how much crude oil will be produced. But there are several other factors contributing to already high prices in certain parts of the country. Here to break it all down for us is Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy. It's an app which helps drivers find low fuel prices. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. In general, we've been seeing gas prices tick down throughout a lot of the country, but there are some major exceptions to that, especially with places like California and the Great Lakes region. And of course, those are major population centers. So can we first talk about why prices were ticking back up in that part of the country?
Yeah, that's right. For the past few weeks, an onslaught of refinery issues, both in the West Coast and the Great Lakes, has pushed gas prices up tremendously in areas of California. Some stations have risen their price $1 to $1.50 a gallon based on those refinery shutdowns, which has brought supply to its lowest level in the West Coast in 10 years. Two refinery issues in the Great Lakes as well has sent gas prices up 50 cents to $1 a gallon in that region.
And when you say refinery issues, what are we talking here? We know that sometimes refineries have to go offline for some scheduled maintenance, but what was happening in these cases?
Well, kind of a variety of both of those. That is, refineries generally do maintenance in the off-peak times of year. With summer behind us now, several refineries are undergoing seasonal maintenance. That's normally not a problem. But in California and the Great Lakes situations, it's the unexpected issues that can arise, akin to getting a nail in your tire when you're taking a road trip or a rock in your windshield. These can be minor issues, but put together, it greatly limits the ability for refineries to produce gasoline. So it's planned maintenance, but more so the unexpected outages, 4 of them in California alone, that have caused prices to soar.
And so you add to that the OPEC Plus news. How is that going to compound what those parts of the country are feeling in terms of gas prices?
Well, as a result of the OPEC decision to cut oil production, I expect that the national average could rise 10 to 30 cents a gallon. What it's going to do, though, in the Great Lakes and West Coast is something that many probably don't expect. That is, the refinery issues I described have started to improve. So prices in the West Coast and the Great Lakes are likely to drop, but by not as much due to that OPEC decision.
And then what about the rest of the country that we left out when we're talking about those specific regions? You just mentioned the prices are likely to increase. So how are those regions of the country going to be affected?
Well, we're already starting to see some of these regions go up in price, and that's because oil prices had expected this OPEC decision. Oil prices now almost $15 a barrel higher than last week, and that's causing prices to rise in areas of the Rockies, the South, the East Coast, and Northeast. I expect the total increase to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 30 cents a gallon. Some areas have already seen that and could go a little bit higher in the week ahead.
Yeah, so let me press you on that. I mean, how much do you expect prices to continue to rise, given what you just said, that some of these increases have already been baked into what we're seeing at the pump?
Exactly. Some of these areas have gone up maybe 5 and 10 cents a gallon. For those areas, they'll see a little bit more of an increase. But for the areas that haven't seen really anything at all, they're going to bear the brunt of the bigger increases now, as much as 10 to 30 cents, starting at any moment, if not already happening. And that could last for the next 1 to 2 weeks. But again, I would expect the totality, the average impact would be 10 to 30 cents a gallon coast to coast as a result of OPEC cutting production.
So those are some of the disparate activities that we don't necessarily see every year around this time. But what we tend to see is that fuel demand tends to dip a little bit in the fall after the summer travel season. Is that seasonal change going to impact gas prices in the short term at all?
Well, it's likely softening the blow of the impact from OPEC's decision to cut oil production. As you mentioned, gasoline demand tends to go down as Americans start staying closer to home. Cooler weather keeps them inside. Demand for gasoline goes down. If OPEC had decided this in the midst of the summer driving season, the impact might be double what it otherwise would be. So a fall in demand generally will help limit the impact. And by the end of the year, we could still see prices that are lower than where we are today.
Lastly, in the limited time we have left, Patrick, is there anything that the Biden administration can do to bring down prices in the near term?
Well, I think the Biden administration has talked a lot about how it does not want to rely on the fossil fuel sector and move away from it. But in that attempt, it's also undermining oil companies' desires to invest, knowing that the writing may be on the wall. So while the Biden administration has gone to countries like Iran and Venezuela and asked for additional oil output, I think the president could provide some clarity. And while he shifts his agenda to cleaner energy, provide clarity to the oil sector that he has gone after in his year and a half in the White House.
Yeah, so you've seen that there, OPEC controls more than 80% of the world's crude reserves. And also, President Biden here just announced that he's going to release 10 million more barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And this will be in addition to the 180 million barrels released since April, 1 million barrels per day, which some people credit for the about 100-day drop of gas prices. So now we're seeing gas prices go up pretty dramatically in some areas as OPEC and OPEC Plus announced these 2 million barrels per day of oil production cuts so that they can raise the price on oil, which is it's the number one factor on the price of gas. So yeah, gas prices already starting to go up. And we're also seeing here the stock markets in a massive decline here, partially on this news as well. NASDAQ falls to a 2-year low on Monday, led by a decline in chip stocks and a deepening recession, fears of a nuclear war as well. A lot of different things going on here in the country. So I'll keep you up to date here with everything. So make sure to subscribe down below. Click the subscribe button if you haven't yet so you don't miss out on our new videos here on our YouTube channel. It's completely free to do so. After you click the subscribe button, click the bell icon so you don't miss out on new videos. Remember that new videos come out here on our YouTube channel every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And thanks so much for hitting the like button. Share these videos with your friends and family so that they know everything, and I'll keep you up to date here. You can click here to watch my newest video next. And here's my newest video about a fourth check, answering questions on that. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.